told you last week that, I'd gone to a restaurant, and I think I've said it on here, and noticed that everyone, exception of probably two people, and I am a people watcher, so everyone that passed our table was obese. And when I say obese, I mean very obese. And there was four young women that probably early 20s sitting at the table next to us. And they worked for some medical company because of their tag on their shirt. And they were morbidly obese. And their plates, I'm not a plate watcher, but I couldn't keep from it. And it just saddened me. It saddened me how the United States, that is the biggest killer in the United States today, is obesity. And I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about it enough as being a disease. And that I've done some research, and I have not seen one thing about how, they will say, that you might develop depression because of obesity. But I really haven't seen anything about how it is a twofold illness. It's that mental and emotional side, and then the physical side. And if it was just the physical side, there are great programs out there. Go to Weight Watchers. You could get on that diet and lose the weight and never have another problem. But the reason that they stay, all of these weight loss places stay in business, is because that's all that they address, is the physical component. And that is not the major problem. Lies between our two ears. It is in our thinking, in that mental and emotional side. And that must be addressed. And I'm not faulting anyone. I'm not being critical of anyone. But I don't know that I've ever talked to a doctor, unless they had an eating disorder themselves, that really got the knowledge of, or had the knowledge of, that this was a much bigger problem than just the weight or obesity, and that both sides must be treated. And so, I did a little research, and in 2020, 41.9% of Americans were obese. Now they're saying it's up as high as 49.5%. Children, there's more obesity with children than any other time in our world. So there was a research done, and I've told this story many times, but it was really some research done with fifth graders, and it was about fear. What did fifth graders fear? And they had them to write down the top 5 things that they had fear of. And what the majority, almost everyone, not everyone, but a high percentage of them, the number one thing was the fear of being fat. That's fifth graders. And by the 5th grade, 6th grade, 4th grade, now we're seeing kids already on diets, or wanting to be on diets, or wanting to, ask their parents, am I over, it's that lookism mentality. So it wasn't mass shooting that was at the top of the list, that somebody had come in their school and, killed children. It wasn't their parents getting a divorce. It wasn't snakes or spiders. It was the fear of getting fat. The fear of getting fat. And I understand that, because I was a fat little girl. I was fat preteen. I was a fat child all the way through, from the time I was 4 years of age until I got into recovery. And children are brutal. There's nothing any more cruel than children are to each other. And I know overweight kids aren't the only ones that are bullied, but I think that they're bullied more and to a higher extent than any other population in school. And I know I was, and the shame of being, I remember being in the 4th grade, and I hope they don't do this anymore, but that nurse would drag those scales into the classroom, and everybody had to get on the scale, and you weighed in front of the class. I was horrified, and I would try to figure out when that might happen so I'd be absent that day. But anyway, it never worked out like that. But I remember in the 4th grade, Douglas was a very overweight kid, and he was made fun of, and I thought Douglas was fat. I mean, I thought he was fat. When I got on the scale, and the teacher weighed also, and her name was Mrs. Moorhead, and the boys would call her Moorhead Less Brains, but anyway, she got on the scales, and when I got on the scales, I was the last one. I can feel the shame coming on right now. I weighed more than the teacher, and I weighed more than Douglas, the fat boy in the class. And I carried that, all the shame of being overweight. And the thing about it, I could not stop the eating. There was so much turmoil in my household, and y'all know most of my story. I'm not going to go into that. But my mother was an alcoholic and a prescription drug addict, and I took care of her. And so I began to use food like she used alcohol. My mother also was an overeater. She never achieved the heights that I did. I mean, she got to, I think her highest weight was 200. Mine was like 287. And, but Mother had a problem with food. And then she would become anorexic, back and forth, all of that. So I'm just saying that I know about obesity. And I know it from the inside out. It's not something that, it is not a judgment call. This is a disease. And I have been to every therapist, every dietitian, every doctor, every person that I knew of to help me lose weight. And no one ever told me what the problem was. No one ever said to me, you have a disease. You have a disease that is much like alcoholism. Your brain is different. Your brain, and I believe this with every fiber of my body. Those of us that have problems with any disorder, whether food, alcohol, whatever, I think our brains are different from that of a normal eater or a normal drinker. And I will believe that till the day I die. And y'all have probably heard me talk and seen the film of where I went up to Oregon, and I was invited to go up and participate in a test that they were doing on drugs. I won't go into all of it, but they were testing every drug across the board, from marijuana to, hardcore drugs, And so I just said, yes, I would come do it. And I really didn't know what they were going to do until I got up there. The reason they wanted me there is because they had seen the addicted to food, and I had talked about being addicted to sugar. And that's why they wanted me to participate in the test because I was a sugar addict. Long story short, I didn't know how they were going to do it. They did an MRI on my brain. They gave me sugar. I had not had sugar for 18 years, and they gave me, 2 or 3 drops of water, ran the machine, and then 2 or 3 drops of milkshake, ran the machine, and by the end of that 80 minutes, I had not had a bite of sugar for 18 years. By the end of that 80 minutes, I was sucking that little tube, trying to get out more of that chocolate milkshake. Like that addiction was activated. But the good news about that, and I'm grateful, is when they pulled me out, I was deathly ill, throwing up. They had to get me back to the hotel and get me in shape to fly home. And I'm glad of that. Because if I'd come out feeling really good and I got a lot out of that sugar, I might still be eating it today. Who knows? I don't know. So when they brought it out on, they always want to sensationalize, the TV, the journalists do, and they waited till they brought out they came and filmed a 6-day, and when they brought out the film, they started with that test, and the scientist was there and the journalist was there. And they showed a picture of a normal brain, and then they showed a picture of my brain. The normal brain had a little activity in it, and then my brain had all kinds of yellows and oranges and reds and greens. And what the journalist said is, she said, oh my, it looks like a Roman candle has gone off in Tenny's brain. And what the scientists said, of all the brains that they tested, that my brain showed the most addictive activity of any brain. Now we're talking about heroin, we're talking about hardcore drugs, we're talking about tranquilizers, we're talking about prescription drugs. So I don't know if if Shades of Hope put it on the internet or someone else put it on there, but anyway, it showed up, the test did, we started running on Facebook or somewhere, and guess what? Someone pulled it off because they said that it wasn't true. That is how much fear people have that there might be an addiction to food or certain foods. Now, and no one can tell you that you have an addiction to certain foods. No one. I can't tell you, but your body can and your brain can. There are people, and I know people in OA that have been in OA 40 years, 45 years, that today that can successfully eat sugar. Now what that looks like is, the guideline is if you can take it or leave it. If you can eat a little portion and walk away from the rest of it, not think about it for 2 or 3 days, you know, you might not have a sugar addiction. But it's a real tricky thing to explore if you are a food addict. And I tell people, you know, I encourage people, if you're going to, when you leave Shades, if you're going to put sugar back in your meal plan, do it with intention. Put it in your meal plan, and you know, and where it will balance out, and then you give that to your sponsor, what you're going to eat. If you're going to eat sugar, put it in your meal plan, be honest about it, and then have someone witness you. Have some, you know, eat that in front of someone, and then have them keep reporting to them, whether it's a sponsor or someone, what happens after you eat that first bite of sugar. Do it with intention. And you may be, you know, able to successfully eat sugar occasionally. I don't know, but your body and brain does. So this is not a talk about sugar, but I got off on it. It is about obesity and the disease and how it is affecting our whole United States. The money that is spent, $173 billion, are spent annually on people that are obese, not the obesity. They're not paying for treatment. Majority of them aren't. Doctors do not, majority of the time, do not recommend obese people to go to inpatient treatment. Now, if they were alcoholic, yeah, they'd call the family in, they'd have them in treatment by the next day or two, but they don't do that with obese people. You know, they will say you need to lose weight, and here's a food plan or a diet. They call it a diet. And we know diets don't work. We go on a diet so we can go off of a diet. A food plan is something we begin to live on the rest of our lives. A food plan. And what that does, that gives you a broad spectrum of wonderful food to choose from. You get to plan your meals. You don't have to go, you know, right at first when people come to Shades. I mean, it's rigid. They do not get a lot of choices. Sometimes they'll get choices of which protein they want or which vegetable. But, you know, basically they eat off of a food plan here that they can live off of the rest of their life, and their families can. That's the kicker. You know, when people go through Shades, they don't have to go home and have a meal plan for them and a meal plan for their family. If you're feeding your kids, if you have young kids in that home and you're feeding them the way you ate when you were overeating, you need to be addressed for child abuse. It's child abuse to overfeed a child. Do y'all know that? I know a couple that has a child that I think he's, I don't know, 5 or 6 now. He is huge. He's morbidly obese. That's child abuse, because those children cannot get the food without the parents' access. There's very little, and research has shown this. You know, I always wanted to have a bad old thyroid problem, that anything I ate would make me gain weight. I don't. I never have. It's about food and, you know, calories and the exercise. It equals out. It equals out. It's not rocket science. It is, you eat more calories than you need, you are going to gain the weight. And yes, we do take people back here, here at Shades to, sometimes help them see where their eating disorder started, where the food addiction started. I can pinpoint mine. I was almost 5 years of age, and it was a traumatic event, and I started eating candy then and other food, and I never got enough until I got in recovery. And so we try to help people get to that core pain. It's not what we're eating, but what's eating us. What are you eating over? Obese people, we train ourselves. It's that hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth. You have a feeling, and it can be a good feeling. It doesn't have to be a bad feeling. Any feeling will do. You get excited about something. I've told this story before, but years ago, we had little kids, and I stayed home with them, and one time my husband was going to go take some machinery up to a town where my aunt lived up in Oklahoma. And he called me and he said, would you and the kids want to ride up there with me, and we'll spend the night and come back? And I thought that'd be a wonderful trip. But I could not stop my crazy thinking long enough to figure out what to pack, for all those little kids. And I remember going to the refrigerator, and I had a bowl of leftover spaghetti in there. I didn't like spaghetti then, and I don't particularly like spaghetti now. It's never been one of my binge foods, but I needed something inside of me to calm me down, where my brain would work, where I could figure out how to pack friggin' suitcases to go on a 24-hour trip. Now that is what food did to me and for me. But I reached in there with my hand and got a handful of that pasta and put that cold stuff in my mouth, chewed it up and swallowed it, and it is like a heroin addict shooting up for someone that's addicted to food. I mean, instantly. I mean, it didn't taste good, it didn't look good, it didn't really feel good chewing it up, but oh, when it went down, it's eased that. I mean, we're looking for that, the big book calls that sense of ease and comfort. That's what alcoholics go for. That's what eating disorder people go for, particularly your compulsive overeaters. The sense of ease and comfort, to ease those feelings, So that's why we do the work that we do. By the way, this week is, we do an intensive once a month, and we've been doing them for 33 years. And out of those 33 years, I used to do 1 or 2 every month, plus a 3-day break and free. I used to be a work addict. But anyway, I've done hundreds of intensives. But this week, due to my not feeling good, I could not do the intensive. So I get to be here with y'all today. I said, okay, if I can't do the intensive, I'm going to do the Zoom. Because I love this work, and if it could help one person a little bit, and I'm missing being over there in that room. But my daughters, Kim and Karen, are doing it. They're very qualified. They have more initials behind their names than I do, but they've worked with me for years. They've got them covered. They're going to be wonderful. But I miss being over there, but I'm glad that I'm with y'all. And the reason that I keep doing what I'm doing is because if I can recover anyone on the face of the earth can. And I've always had a love for any addict, but I have a real deep place in my heart for obesity. Anyone that has any form of obesity, because that was what run my life for many years. Okay, so research has also shown that those that are obese, on an average, their medical bills on an average for a year is around $1,800 to $2,000 more than the average person. People with obesity have lots of problems, physical problems, because the body is not designed to carry around 50, 80, 100, 150, 200 excess pounds, even 30. everything will begin to break down. And y'all know that. But the good news is every physical problem, and you can write this down and take it to the bank and take it to your doctor. Every physical problem that is caused by obesity, when the person gets into recovery, I'm talking about daily recovery, every day, every day, every day. We've seen it happen before our very eyes. We'll get severe diabetics in here on insulin, severe diabetics. And by the end of the second or third week, they no longer need insulin. Their numbers are within a normal range. Many of the physical problems that people have is caused from obesity, and the recovery is learn how to feed yourself appropriately. It is basic. It is so basic. It creates heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and they're seeing now certain cancers. I have always known that on a certain level, but I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I've always known, because I've known a lot of obese people that have died of different forms of cancer. Now research is showing that obesity can cause different forms of cancer. So there again, obesity occurs when you take in more calories than you burn. Through normal daily activities and exercise. Your body stores the excess calories, and it turns into this word that I would not let my children say in the house. It turns into FAT. It turns into fat. When my kids were little, they grew up thinking the F word was fat. When my little boy was in about the third grade, he came home one day and he said, "Mama, you've always said the F word had 3 letters. It has 4 letters." Anyway, they start learning things in school that they should. But anyway, I wouldn't let them say fat. And my biggest fear of raising my children was that they would be overweight. And if you want to raise children to have eating disorders, let me tell you how to do that. Restrict their food. Now, I cooked 3 meals a day, and I plated everybody's plate. I plated it. I was a police with the sweets. If we had a dessert, they ate it at mealtime. I would give them, I was so strict and rigid. I would put a lock on the freezer to keep them out of those things that I buy at the bakery that I would put in their lunch occasionally. I was a staff sergeant when it came to their food. I couldn't regulate my own, but I would regulate theirs. And, out of, y'all know I have one daughter that has a problem with, has always been an overeater, and one that's recovering anorexic. And by the way, the one that's an overeater is in good recovery, and the one that is anorexic and bulimic is in good recovery. I'm not blaming myself or anything. These diseases are handed down from generation to generation. And, I saw my mother eat anything that she wanted. She wanted me to feed her, and I did. And she'd want me to always cook her a surprise. And the way that I made my mother feel good as a little girl was to feed her. And then, of course, I would always feed myself to make myself feel good when I was feeding her. So to go the opposite way and restrict your children's food, out will pop an eating disorder person, or it happened in our family. We have 2 of them. I'm seeing a lot of different health professionals, and I have a OT person that that's helping me with exercise, the upper body. And she got to talking about her little son that's 2 years of age. And somehow she got on about what he eats and how she feeds him. And I just kept, I'm a question asking person. I just got to asking her questions. I'll tell you, if every mother could feed their children like this woman does her 2-year-old, there would be fewer and fewer eating disorders. And she does not, one of the things that stuck out to me, she does not reward her son with a cookie. If you don't cry, I'll give you this cookie. Or if you don't cry, I'll go buy you an ice cream cone. Food is food in their house. The kid eats food to nourish his body. She said that they don't restrict him from a cookie occasionally, but it's not a reward. It's not anything, it's just part of the meal. She said she will put his meal down and then set maybe a cookie by the side. And many times, he will eat his food and then he'll carry the cookie around, or sometimes he'll eat it. Those habits start in childhood, and boy, I applauded that mother. And by the way, she has not had any eating disorder. She is just a health professional, and so is her husband, and they want to raise this child as healthy as they can, and food is a big part of how they're raising their child. So anyway, let me tell you what causes obesity. All of you folks know that. A lot of times it's family inheritance. It can run in the genes. Obesity tends to run in families, not always, but it does tend at times to run in families. And that's not just in the genes. It's more in the environment. It's more in the eating habits. It's more in the activities. And I hate to be body watchers, but anyway, I'll see these families that, in the mall, the father will be very obese, the mother will be obese, the children will be obese, and it saddens me. It saddens me. But anyway, that's the only reason I'm talking about this. Maybe one person, and as far as obesity, the thing about it, people don't have to lose all of their weight to receive a huge benefit from weight loss from 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 pounds. If they can do just a small, say 30 pounds, if you weigh 300 pounds, let's look at 10% and see what those numbers of high blood pressure and all, even a small amount of weight will begin to change how your body feels. It is not my research. This is research, that the health professionals have seen. So, I think sometimes people think, and I thought this, when I weighed so much, it was so hopeless to go on one of those strict diets that I would go on, and I would think about all of the massive amount of weight that I had to lose, and I would get so depressed over it, and I would think I'm never going to make it, and I'd have to go eat over it. In the summertime when my little kids were home, I was addicted to peanut butter. I don't even like peanut butter today, but I would eat it. I'd buy a 3-pound jar from, thinking, okay, it's summertime and I'll get the kids peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I would eat it all. I wouldn't have it to feed my children. So one summer, and I did it several times, but I asked the kids to hide the peanut butter from me. It was that morning. I said, hide this from Mama, and I don't care what I say, do not give it to me. Well, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had some feelings coming up, and I wanted that peanut butter. And they wouldn't give it to me, and I thought I was going to beat them to death if they didn't give me the peanut butter. I went nuts on them, and I'm not proud of that, but they got the message, and they gave me the peanut butter. That is an addict, folks. That is an addict. And when you buy peanut butter off of the shelf, look at the back of how much sugar is in peanut butter and how much sugar is in most any processed food. That's why they make it taste good. They process it to make it taste good, so we'll buy it. So, the behavior, the activities, the eating habits, that's what children pick up on. Now, sometimes it'll work the other way. Y'all know my daughter, Kim. She's the one that looked at an overweight mother. And in her early years, she says as a little girl, we had a problem with her eating all of her life. That as a little girl, she would say to herself that she knew that her mother needed the food more than she did. And she would watch me that if she didn't eat, then when I'd clean off the table, I ate everything that was left on people's plates. So in her child's mind, her mother needed the food more than she did. Now, as a teenager, she reported and reports now is that she would look at her mother, look at me as obese, and she did not want to be overweight. So she was the one, she's not my anorexic, but she's the one that had the disease of anorexia because she didn't want to look like her mother. She was more into lookism at that time. And her older sister, 13 months older, they were in competition of the diets, and all three of us were practicing bulimia at one time right before I went to treatment, or 2-3 years before I went to treatment. And they would get into my diet pills and my laxatives, and I would never talk about it. That's why we've got to get this stuff out in the open and talk about it. The only thing I would say to them, I would say, you girls stay out of my bathroom, stay out of my stuff. And they knew what I was talking about. I meant my diet pills and the laxatives. And of course, that made them want to get into it that much more. And so all three of us were practicing an eating disorder at the same time inside the house. And I'm very grateful to say that we're all three in recovery today. Okay, so number 2, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. An unhealthy diet high in calories, oversized portions, fast food. All of these fast food places are really, beefing up, trying to get the largest portions and all of that and all of that and all of that. And look in the lines of people who go, anyway, there is an epidemic of obesity. So unhealthy diets play a huge role in it. Another thing that plays a huge role in it, parents are busy. It takes both of them to make a living most of the time. And then kids are busy in sports and going here and going there. And family mealtime, my kids were raised back, in they remind me all the time, in the, 60s and 70s, where we had meals around the table 3 times a day. Now, is that going to stop them from having obesity? No, but at least if you can feed them. And I did cook good meals for my children. And like I said, restricted their food because I didn't want to be overweight. Okay, so a healthy diet, that goes without saying. And it's not a diet, but have a healthy food plan and watch the portion sizes. And then number 3 is liquid calories. We have people coming in here, denial is don't even know I'm lying. We'll have people come in here and they will say, and their spouses will say, well, I don't know why she or he is so overweight, they hardly eat anything. But then you have them start counting up the Dr. Peppers, the Cokes, and they will not drink just a size, they'll do those quart sizes. And that is where the weight gain comes. It's just liquid sugar. And they will drink massive amounts of soft drinks. And then they'll say, well, I hardly eat anything. And their family backs them up, and bless their heart, there's something wrong with their chemistry. No, it's not. It's that hand-to-mouth, that liquid calories. Calories are calories. The body doesn't care. It is about how many calories your body needs to maintain a normal weight for you. And then inactivity. And if you have a life that is, in today, coming out of the pandemic, people have built up habits. They had them before, but they're worse now. And that is that computer screen. People sitting in front of some kind of screen, either the computer, the telephone, something where they are looking and they sit and watch it. And this has been going on for a long time, that women, particularly obese women, and they have to drive a ways in our state. And we don't have this problem so much in our state, except the ones who live close to the border. What they'll do, many obese, and it's men and women, but the research has shown there's more obese women who do this. They'll get their kids off to school of a morning, drive across the state line to a casino, and they'll start, and most of them play the slots. and they will start playing the slots. Now, after you go to a casino and you have given them a lot of money, they cater to you. They will send you special invitations. They will bring you every kind of food that you want and drinks, as long as you feed that idiot machine the money. And so many of them, obese women particularly, have become gambling addicts. And they couple it with, well, this is my recreation. I don't have anything else to do. I mean, I can tell you a story, and I won't because of her anonymity, but I will say she was a very high-profile person in the political field, and she was dying from compulsive overeating and gambling. She would leave her job as a high official and go across that state line and stay until the next morning and drive frantic. She had no kids. But by the time she got to us, she was almost dead of obesity, and the gambling she was one of the worst gamblers we've ever treated. She got to buy her a long stay here. So that's how you couple addictions together. So, after the pandemic, this deal with screens and computers and all, people are addicted to them. And then Amazon, I won't get into all of that, but it is highly associated with weight gain. And I want to say obesity occurs at any age, and we're seeing them younger and younger and younger and younger. And obesity, there's obesity-related issues. I'm going to just mention, y'all all know them, but I'm going to mention them. I've never seen an obese person yet that didn't suffer from some form of depression. Now, I have had them, and I know some, and you see them on TV, and there's some famous overweight people. Now, if they love being 300 pounds, go for it. And if they can be healthy, that's their business. It's not mine. But I don't think majority of overweight people enjoy being overweight. And it's not just about the looks, it's about the health. And so the number one, I think the weight really affects the quality of life, and one of the related issues is depression. I don't believe we've ever treated any eating disorder person, and I want to stretch to say just about any eating disorder person that we've ever treated, but you get the morbidly obese in here, they suffer from depression. We see it over and over. In the depression, they get sad, they hate the way they look, and their brain says, I know how you can feel better, and they go to the refrigerator and they feed that addiction to make themselves feel better. And then what that brings on their body, it brings on lots of disabilities. And it saddens me to be in Walmart and see young women in their 30s driving themselves around on those mobile carts. Now, I don't know, maybe they have some disease other than obesity. I do know they have obesity. They may weigh 400 pounds and be in their 30s and driving themselves around, and their little kids be following them on that. So I don't have a judgment about it. It's not a judgment call. I'm not judging them. It's just, I just have a lot of concern. And it just hurts my heart. Number 3 is there is a lot of shame and guilt connected with obesity. I think more so, those of us that are bulimic, absolutely, we carry a lot of shame and guilt. I don't see anorexics carrying as much shame and guilt while they're in the disease, because they get such a high off of it. But when you bring them down and they start refeeding themselves, that's when the shame and guilt can hit. But for obese people, I think they do carry around a lot of shame and guilt. And then social isolation. They begin to stay at home more and become recluse. And then their activity becomes lower. Okay, so to wind this up, one of the things is to realize diets don't work. We go on them to go off of them. Meal plans do. And it's important to get a healthy meal plan that works for you. And I'm going to give you just a few guidelines, and most of you on here know this. If you already have a good food plan that works for you, one that you have been able to maintain abstinence for at least 30 days, back-to-back abstinence without any cravings, don't change it. You have hit on something that's working for you. If you can find a meal plan, and that means a meal plan where you are leaving out what you know you're addicted to. If you could do that 30 days and those cravings have been removed, bingo. You have found something that you can live on the rest of your life. And the cravings are only set up when we put the substance in our body. That mental obsession is up in our brain, and that gets activated. You know, we have a problem, we get to thinking about certain food or alcohol or what that would make us feel better. Now, my belief, the only thing that can remove that mental obsession is the God of our understanding. I don't think any human being is powerful enough to remove the mental obsession, but God can and will when He sought. But what we can do as food addicts and as alcoholics is give up the substance. And then if you're, an overeater, and if you found a food plan that works, stay on it. Don't change it. Number two, if you need a food plan, begin with one. Go to OA, go to EA, go to a 12-step program and I recommend Overeaters Anonymous. I will tell you, Food Addicts Anonymous in Recovery is good, but remember, it is one of the strictest, most rigid food programs that there is. Overeaters Anonymous is where I found recovery, and I think that's where I recommend for people. So get into OA. Ask your sponsor what she does and see if she or he will share their food plan with you. That can be one, use it for a while. And then number three, eliminate all of foods and foods that trigger binging, purging, or restricting. Remember, if you're a compulsive overeater, you have the potential to be a bulimic and an anorexic. Eating disorders are all on the same spectrum. And I see it over and over. We get a compulsive overeater in here. That weight begins to fall off of them. They get home. They're on that food plan. They're getting frisky. They're losing the weight. They feel good. They look good. They love the compliments. And in a year's time, if they're not careful, if they're not working with sponsors, they will be back here and we'll be treating them for anorexia. This disease is deadly, folks, and it's not just, you can start out with one and you can wind up practicing all three. That's why we don't give up on the program. It's a daily reprieve. If you binge on most any food, if you tend to overeat or undereat on all foods, or if you have trouble estimating how much you are eating, weigh and measure. Weigh and measure your food. I weighed and measured my food probably the first 18, 20 years, and until that mental obsession was removed, when I would have a problem or get upset, I'd go back to weighing and measuring my food, because I knew that I was setting myself up to and you can overeat, you can overmeasure your food. I've seen people, and I've done it, take a 2-cup measuring cup and stuff enough salad in there. When you get it out, you can fill up a whole salad bowl. So you have to be realistic about weighing and measuring. But if you have a problem with overeating or undereating and not knowing what to eat, weigh and measure. And it can bring you back. It helps not only mentally, and physically, but mentally. And it gets the food back in order immediately. Make sure your food plan provides overall nutritional balance. Get that from a doctor, and I hate to say that. I say this: many doctors do not know a healthy meal plan. If you know of a dietitian that understands eating disorders, go to them. But be careful who you get a meal plan from, because a lot of dietitians, and this is how they're trained. It is true. There are no good or bad foods. And they want you to eat like a normal person. Well, folks, most of us who have eating disorders are not normal eaters. We've got to figure out what our trigger foods are. So get a meal plan from somebody you trust, and you might need to go to an eating disorder specialist who knows about nutritional balance. Put down unhealthy eating behaviors. This is, the number one is diet pills. I met a woman yesterday. Beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful woman. I'd seen her a few weeks ago, and I immediately could see that she'd lost considerable weight. And I said, well, you're looking good. Well, I've lost 20 pounds. I'm on diet pills. And you could hear her talk. My doctor gave me diet pills. And I take the diet pills, and I've lost 20 pounds, and I'm going to lose some more 20 pounds. And this gives me lots of energy, and blah, 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 blah. Doctors are still giving people diet pills. That's what they do. That's why you can't depend on your doctor to help you with morbid obesity. And half of them are morbidly obese anyway. So, diet pills is number one. Not eating, self-starvation, vomiting, eating while driving. We need to get EW, eating while driving. I could have had many wrecks. I would drop the food and lean over and pick up the food out of the floorboard while driving. It's a wonder I hadn't killed my kids or someone else. Don't drive and eat. Grazing between meals is not healthy. And some of you may need to eat 5 small meals a day, but let someone else help you put that food plan together. You don't put it together yourself. Eating in front of the TV, boy, that is the biggie, because you have to, and that's the same with reading. Don't read and eat, because, you'll finish your meal and you'll still have 2 or 3 paragraphs left in that chapter, but you're out of food, so you'll go get more food to empty, to even out the reading and the eating, or I did, y'all might not do that. Also, eating too fast or too slow. That needs to be monitored. Eat the number of calories your body needs to have when you reach a healthy weight. Don't make a decision about target weight alone. Don't believe those charts, folks. If you are this tall, this is the weight, and it's usually the lower end. Laura, you know about your body. Get to a weight that is healthy for you. And it may be, some professional may say you need to lose 30 pounds or 40 pounds. But if you're coming from 250 pounds, don't listen to it. Listen to your body. But stay on that meal plan, and until you reach a weight goal, whatever that is. And I am absolutely proof positive. If you stay on a meal plan, I thought I was through losing weight probably 10 years ago when I weighed 160 pounds. I was content with that. I could buy clothes off the rack. And then I went down to 150. Great. That was always my goal, to weigh 150 pounds. And then I stayed on the meal plan and kept going and going and going and staying on the meal plan and not focusing on the weight. And I will tell you, folks, I don't know how it happened other than I'm treated by eating disorder. And I don't mind telling you, I have lost 160 pounds and maintained it. But the weight loss has come off, and Wanda knows. She probably remembers me. I was a little chubette early in OA. And the only thing I can contribute my weight loss to is a meal plan, a constant, consistent meal plan. Have I stayed on it 100% every day? Absolutely not. None of us do. But when you get off of it, you step right back on it. There are some things that I have never gone to, but I will have overeaten and at different times. But I would always go back to the meal plan and stay on the meal plan. And I'm at the point when I was sick, my weight went down, way down. I lost 10 pounds. while I was ill. I'm back, I'm getting some of it back, but that was scary to me. I mean, I looked on that scale and I'd never seen that number ever on the scale. I am getting some weight back. I do not need to be that number. But had I not had some treatment and some recovery from my eating disorder, I absolutely could have seen that number and loved it and would want to go lower, because that's how the mind of an eating disorder person works. And I have let my family know the number. I've let my friend Misty know the number. I've let the medical staff, they're watching it, because left to my own devices, I might like weighing what I weighed 2 weeks ago. Who knows? So that's what I have. Just don't make your food choices by yourself alone. Check your food plan and any changes that you might have with another recovering person. Don't try to let your husband or your child or anyone monitor your food intake. It's not their place. Now, they can support you in your weight loss and all, but don't bring them in there to help you lose weight. That's not their job. Don't get in a contest with your kids about losing weight. That's not the way to do it. I would recommend for you to encourage your family to read Fat is a Family Affair by Dr. Judy Hollis. I talked to Judy. I mean, we've been talking. We visit a lot, and I told her I'm still recommending your books. I guess it was 2 days ago that we were texting. Fat is a Family Affair by Dr. Judy Hollis is the best book on obesity or any eating disorders and where the family is involved. Get the book for your family. If they haven't read it, get it, you read it, and get them to read it and see. Now, like I say, I've quit sharing and gone to preaching. I will say, stop shaming on yourself. Do not shame yourself. Whatever size you are, you're perfect right today in the skin that you're in, and it's up to you to make the decisions of how you want to treat obesity. That is a mental, emotional, and physical disorder, and I believe the only answer is spiritual. Through the 12 steps, and it works. So that's what I have, and I didn't mean to go this long, but I got all fired up. We've got some good people on here that have been in recovery for a long time, and I'm going to take a step out and ask my friend Wanda, what has she done all of these years? You know, Wanda and I have been on this journey a long time together, and Wanda, would you be willing to share?